Hello, and welcome to M3 Live. My name is Malcolm Travers. Male Media Mind is a grassroots organization dedicated to uplifting and unifying our community through dialogue, insight, creativity, and knowledge. And every Monday at noon, I have lunch with Devon, and we break down topics from our respective shows. Of course, you can catch Devon and the Blurred Council every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern. We talk all about comics, shows, games, movies from a Black gay perspective.
Yes.
And of course, for my show, I have a lot of philosophical topics, relationship topics, interpersonal relationships, and just kind of like some, fun stuff here and there. Always like getting everyone's perspective. But I like doing these lunch shows because it gives us a little, I don't know, like you can dive into topics a little bit more and it's a little more relaxed. So, how you doing, Devon?
I am doing great. I'm glad to be here. It is a glorious Monday. Glorious.
And I hate Mondays. I'm just gonna do the Garfield.
Oh,
It's all right.
I don't like Mondays. Not everybody does.
No. But I mean, it's a day.
hmm
But we were talking a little bit before the show, pop culture stuff that I don't really participate in.
hmm
Two things we could just kind of talk about a little bit. One was the idea that actors have to be politicians, and the idea that there's a group of fans who think Beyonce is a goddess. I guess. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Let's tackle the most recent. Let's tackle Beyonce first.
Okay. So she did win Album of the Year, which was the first time she got one.
Yep.
And I think she is also the most awarded recording artist because of it.
hmm
I think she was tied with Jay-Z before, and she got two more tonight or last night.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess the the worshippers of Beyonce are trying to use this as evidence, I guess, that she is truly a goddess the way that they see her,
hmm
and rub it in people's faces, and then they get sensitive when they get pushed back.
Yeah. Of course.
So here's the deal: it's like I love Beyonce, I absolutely rock it, even though I'm not a country fan, so I didn't really like Cowboy Carter. I liked
hmm
a few songs from it, but
Yeah.
at least for the last few albums, I've been rocking it, and then I went back in her discography, and yeah, I was like, oh yeah, this is good. It's not great, but it's good.
Exactly.
I could definitely bop to it.
hmm
But I think one of the things I liked about you know Beyonce and Lemonade was the visual album. I
Yeah.
really was feeling both of those. Um, Mind you, I was definitely high most of the time I was watching.
You were.
Yeah,
What
I
were
was
you
definitely
high off of, Malcolm?
weed. I mean, just some green, some plant medicine. But
Some,
yeah,
yeah, some medicinal herbs. There we go.
yeah, I was definitely like glowing when watching Glow. Like a blow. Glowing when I watch Glow.
hmm
But yeah, it was an experience. So like I get it, the people who really feel it. But the thing is, what I was getting at, someone who loves things, you love what you love,
hmm
and you hate it when people criticize what you love. It's like if you're sensitive about it, then don't talk about it on the internet. You know, I'll give an example. Right now, I'm really feeling the show Severance.
Okay.
On Apple TV. I know from this show that this is not a show for everyone. One, it's very cerebral. It's very slow. Most of the time, you don't know what's going on. It's very reminiscent of Lost. In that regard, where a lot of times people want to know exactly what's happening, and anything that's confusing like that, like throws people off. So I get it, and I would say like part of me would I think understand someone who would criticize someone who criticizes the show. It's like you are not very deep of a person. You know what I mean? Like if this show strikes you as like, you know, frivolous or whatever, or like uninteresting, it's because you don't really like to investigate things, you know. And
Mhm.
you could criticize someone that way. I wouldn't. I'm just gonna say I wouldn't do that because I think
Yeah.
we need people who are different, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, people need to like different things
Yeah.
because that's what it means to be um a diverse population, to enjoy different things, like but yeah, my understanding that you brought to me and that many other people have,
Mhm.
so these Beyonce fans really do get in their feelings, especially
God, yeah, they do.
especially if you just say anything slightly critical, like,
Right.
so what was, yeah, I know John posted something on his page. What was it?
Mhm.
What did he say on his page?
Um, hold on, let me go back and
Because the way that John posts, it's not necessarily directly critical. It's just like rolling your eyes. That's the vibe of, So oh, here we go. Here goes this Beyonce stuff.
right, and let me get back to his post because
Yeah.
it says, "Why is it that just because you were not a Beyonce fan, dudes, assholes get all tight?" That's what John's post was,
Okay.
and um, maybe one or two like my post, and you got to let John. I would hope that John, when we have John goes in deep tomorrow, I hope this post comes up
Yeah.
where John goes deep. Because yes, my response is under there too.
Yeah.
But my response was, okay, here's what I said. I said nobody can, first of all, I'm gonna say this: nobody can make you hate or like a celebrity or an artist or have a favorite. That is your own individual like or hate of them. Okay, the things that they do, the things they produced, all of that. Okay. I was a Beyonce fan back in the day. I stopped after B Day and after I Am. And then after that I was just like, oh, I was like, oh, okay. I don't think I like her music anymore. And also, her fans make it hard for you to enjoy her. I will admit there is that too. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but again, they should have. I mean, but again, you like and hate whoever, that's your own thing. Okay. So after that, I became like, okay, yeah, Beyonce is just okay to me now. She's a great entertainer. She's just okay in my view. Um, but to his John's post, I said because people act like Beyonce is a goddess. They put her above everybody else. They put her as the greatest entertainer now, and that she could do no wrong, and that she's a black woman breaking down barriers and doing things. And I'm like, those things we can't take away from Beyonce. She has done those. Okay, she has made great accomplishments in her career over her journey. Okay, she's done that. We can't take it away from her. However, just because a person doesn't feel as strongly as you do about her, or is not much of a fan of hers, or not a fan at all, it's like when people say that, oh, you're gay. Yeah, you can be all these other things. You can be a murderer, a rapist, a con artist, an embezzler, but don't be gay.
Mm.
And in the gay world, in the entertainment world, and in the black world, you can hate, you can do all these other things, but just don't hate Beyonce. If you hate Beyonce, you're against everything. You're against everybody. Or
Okay.
if
So
you say you're not a fan, you're against everybody.
I will tell you one that I felt recently, and so please don't come for me.
No, I am
No,
not coming
no,
for you.
I have one. I have
Okay,
one, a
okay,
different artist,
okay, okay.
I felt the same kind of way about, who
Hmm.
I recognize as one of the greatest artists of all time, but it's not
Hmm.
something that I feel.
Right.
And whenever I say it out loud, I get stabbed looks.
That okay.
So here it is, Prince.
I would not give you stab looks for Prince. Prince is
I'm just saying.
amazing. Right. I get it though.
But no, mine is that,
Hmm.
I'm not that huge a Prince fan.
Hmm.
But here's the deal: if someone is out celebrating Prince, if they got like purple on with the glasses,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say shit about Prince.
Right.
And that's the thing. I think people for Beyonce will say something. I
Yeah.
think there are people who like to take down Beyonce fans
Hmm.
versus someone like me, and I get it because I'm on that side. It was just like, Of course I jam it. Prince is, of course, super influential. I understand from a technical perspective, like he's a, beyond just an entertainer, he's a songwriter, he's an innovator. He has like some of the most, just like, riffing, playing multiple instruments. Like it's just a genius, right? Doesn't mean that I necessarily have to like it. You know what I'm saying?
That is true. That is true.
And so but the thing is, I've definitely felt the judgment when I say that I'm not, moved to
Yeah,
tears.
because you are going to get that because people are gonna feel like
Yeah.
you must be anti-black. You like you must not really be gay or black or whatever because you don't like Prince. I'm just like, oh my gosh, really? Is that?
But you know what I've learned to do?
What? Shut up.
I've learned to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah,
Yes,
just keep your mouth shut.
and it's okay.
Like,
It's okay.
when because I have my faves. I have my faves in different categories, and I don't tell people this a whole lot, and I feel like people are going to come for me, and they're probably going to give me death stares if I say who my favorite is. But I'm gonna be look. I don't care. I am able to say that my favorite artist over the last 5+ years has been Ariana Grande. And I know people are like, I know when
I've heard that too because she's one of my favorites as well.
yeah, and I mean to me, it's that voice. Her voice could heal like the world for me. It's just how I feel about her.
So
But
we talked about this. Like she's one of these artists who has perfect pitch.
yeah,
There've only been a few, like Mariah, Brandy. There have been a few who you can layer her voice.
Yes,
because she has perfect pitch. She can stay on a note for like forever, and she can do like whistle tones and shit. Like her voice is literally on another level. It is.
And her album "Thank You Next" came. Look, I will tell you like this: I was going through my last breakup, and her album "Thank You Next" came out, and let me tell you, that was my healing Bible right there. Every fucking day, like. Okay, that was my healing Bible for real. Like my healing guide. Like honestly, it was like her music every day. There was not a day when I was going through that, at first there was not a day that her music was not playing in my ear. Okay, but in back in the day, I used to be a huge Britney fan. Well, I still like Britney. I still love.
The
Britney.
music is good.
Yeah. And to me, her best album was Britney. Just like Ariana Grande's best album to me is Thank You Next, and Beyonce's favorite album to me is B-Day, because of the way it was the production and everything on B-Day was awesome to me. I'm just like,
I have to take another look at it. I guess, like, honestly, I wasn't paying much attention to her earlier.
Yeah,
but I'll have to go back.
So, but I think what it is that also with social media and how everybody's become so influential with that, and talking about your artists and your favorites is so much easier to do than it was back in the day, and it has made people. Social media has ruined people. It has made people brave keyboard warriors where they'll say whatever out their mouth, and you trigger people, and it goes from there. It goes all the way down from there. Like seriously.
Yeah, the funny thing is, some of the things I've been reading about social media, prior to 2009, because that was when smartphones, had app stores, let's just put it that way. And specifically Instagram and Facebook, could be accessed from your phone. Obviously, there was social media as far back as like the early 2000s and so forth.
Yeah.
But back then there was a clear delineation between online world and real world. Like we started confusing things that people said in message boards and what happened in the real world. Like we kind of understood the two as two separate things, because there have been message boards since like the early 90s.
Oh yeah.
But we understood that was like, you weirdos on the reps. And even before that, you had like groups and magazines and sort of like just niche communities. People did meetups in real life, and so I mean there were still fandoms that existed prior to the internet. you know, I can't say I understand them well because I wasn't a part of them, and it's just interesting to learn that like even as far back as we're talking like Victoria, England, philosophers back in like 1800 Europe had diss tracks of each other. I'm just
Wow,
so
that
like
is
so
interesting.
not kidding. Like they were talking about Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto.
Mhm.
You know, he wrote his manifesto or whatever, and then at the end of it, he did diss tracks of all the other philosophers he was.
Wow,
I'm
that is
just saying, like it's what they did. Like
that is interesting.
people had stands. It was so. There's always been this culture. I think it's true though that the barrier to entry
Mhm.
is much lower. Like, um, in order for anyone to actually have read Karl Marx, you had to had money to buy the book and education enough to read it, right?
Mhm.
Um, at this point, you don't even have to be able to read, right? Like you can just watch a video. You don't even have to have the barrier of entry of actually being literate. You know, like you could just say some shit online
Right.
and post
Yeah.
it, and everyone can see it. Millions of people.
Mhm. Like
uh,
the whole world can see what you're posting.
exactly. So it's interesting. And to that degree, I wanted to switch to the other topic, which is that these entertainers also
Yeah.
have to act like politicians because they also often have.
And also have some media training because a
Mhm,
lot of the quite a few of them lack that.
right.
Like what to say
So,
in it.
so one of the things I respect Beyonce for doing is just instead of having media training, which I don't think she has very great media training, she
Right.
just ignores the media. Like she just like it's just like she is smart enough to keep her mouth shut
She's
about
like,
most of them.
yeah, she's like, I'm not good at because you can tell when she does get interviewed, she's not that great at it.
She really
she's
is not.
so she really isn't. So a lot of times it's like she doesn't do a lot of interviews, or if she or I think she would prefer to do them like as magazine interviews instead of video interviews. You
Mhm.
like if you're gonna come in and write an article about me, she'd rather do that than
Yeah, yeah.
sit there
And
and video her while you're asking her questions.
I think a lot of entertainers can learn from her in that regard, which is like
Yeah,
try not to be something that you're not.
right. Like if you
You
know
know?
you're not good at interviewing, or if you're not good at being on video and being asked questions at the same time, just do an article, or just write it in, something,
Pretty much. So we were talking about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man voice actor, the voice
Yeah,
actor who played Peter Parker.
yeah,
And I guess there was some controversy about
mm,
the show because there were was
yeah.
it the Osbournes were made black in the show.
It wasn't just that. Well, of course that's part of the woke mob, and of course they're going to
Yeah.
be around. But the voice actor said that he's just glad that the show wasn't woke and annoying as he thought it was going to be. And of course, these days saying woke, woke means that anything that's a person of color, a woman of color, and or a woman in a lead, a woman of color, more so. Anybody that's a person of color is not to be in media. We only want like straight white men or quiet white women who don't say too much or do anything. It's that's what we call that's the woke mob these days.
Yeah.
And he said that he's glad it wasn't woke and annoying. And that is the wrong thing to say when you are the voice actor of a show that shows so much diversity. Not to mention the creator and the showrunner is a black man. So
Yeah.
that's
So what was
like
he responding to? Like, do you know what the context of him saying that was?
wow. Yeah, they asked him how does he feel about being Peter Parker and about the show itself and voicing Peter Parker. And at first he was like, well, he did try to, I guess I wouldn't call it a buffer, but I guess that's what you could call it
Mm,
to what he was about to say. He's like, at first he's because at first he was like, I'm nervous about this. I mean, he's right. At first I was nervous about voicing him and seeing if I could do the Peter Parker character justice in Spider-Man character
mhm.
justice. And then he jumps to I'm glad it wasn't woke and annoying. And I'm just like, you should have stayed on that.
Nobody asked him. It wasn't even part of the question, huh?
Right.
Okay.
He just
Yeah.
wait there. It's just like, sir.
So my question also about the show, because there's that sort of the politics of it wasn't even really race swapping the Osbournes because the weird thing about one of the original cartoons is that Norman Osborn had like waves in his hair.
Yeah, I said that yesterday too. I'm like, in the original cartoon, because I think they were supposed to be black, but because I think it's starting to come out that a lot of these cartoons back in the '90s, they wanted characters to be black, but back then when we had strong Hollywood America, white
Yeah,
Hollywood America,
yeah,
where they were like, nope, if they can't be white or some other
yeah,
color or whatever, no, we can't put them on TV.
yeah,
Just like with Rogue and X-Men, like Rogue was supposed to be black originally,
yeah,
but the creator was like, the guy told him like, no, we need a white person. You can't put somebody black like this at this time because originally Rogue was supposed to be a black character. Period.
yeah, yeah,
She was not supposed to be a white Southern belle. She's supposed to be black. So now we're starting to find out that a lot of characters were supposed to be people of color, not just all white.
yeah. So I guess my question is, has there been any vocal backlash to your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man because of the race swap?
Of course, there's been vocal backlash, but it's your normal
Yeah,
run-of-the-mill keyboard warriors crying with their white tears about Norman Osborn being black instead of white, and the I don't know if it was surprising
mm,
or more so out of left field, more so shocking.
mm,
But even Bo DeMaio, who
mm,
is not in the best light with Marvel and Disney right now because of
yeah,
the things that have happened. But he was the showrunner of X-Men '97, and even he came out and said, "Stop race swapping or color swapping these characters that were originally white."
yeah.
And we didn't talk about that on the show. We agreed not to. Because we were like, Bo DeMaio right now is not really
Yeah,
he's in other world right now. We don't care. But I was just shocked to hear him say that. But I'm like, you're not making your case any better with anybody with the way that you're coming out about a lot of things right now either.
yeah,
Like you're really giving that you are kind of on the side of anti-black and
yeah,
anti-color. Even though I try to give him the benefit of the doubt, I'm like, okay, well, maybe there are some things there because a lot of things that were being said at first, there was
mm,
really no physical proof. It was just a lot of hearsay and a lot of misinterpreted posts that he made. But now
mm.
I'm starting to be like, they might have been right. They might have been right. I don't know because
I
I'm
gotta
like,
say this. Hold up. I
okay,
sent this to you some while ago because it was it William Defoe with fucking
with the
waves?
waves, yeah, I saw that. I saw that. I was like, sir,
I
I was
know
like,
that's
yeah,
horrible.
that is horrible.
But it was that's how out of place it was in the first cartoon. It's like, why is this white dude got waves? Like, why is
Mhm.
you just kind of let it go though, right? Because it's a cartoon, it's just like
Yeah.
a style choice. But these are clearly waves on a white man's head.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah,
were. Yeah.
yeah. But I think I'm gonna move on. I don't know. Did your food arrive or
Not yet. It's
not
still on
yet?
this way. Not
Okay,
yet.
okay. Because I was gonna give you a chance to run and get it if you. I have one. This is like on a topic completely different, total
Okay.
vibe shift. I'm going to talk about something known as I think what was it called? Dread um, dread risks. And the idea of a dread risk is whenever your fear of something actually causes you to be in more harm, you know,
Mhm.
and sort of the philosophical, maybe psychological underpinnings of that. Let me see if I can find the video I was going to play, and I'm going to try to share the link a few more places if I can find it. Okay, here we go.
Maybe I'm fearful about flying, and that's certainly understandable. But just please know that my first officer.
No, but more people could die in cars as a result of the plane crash that happened in DC this past week. The chances might be small, but it's not impossible, and it's because of something known as dread risks. The term dread risk comes from this guy, Gerd Geigerenzer. He's a German psychologist specializing in decision-making and risk perception, and his research centered around human behavior in light of the September 11th attacks. In it, he posited that up to 1,500 more people died in car crashes as a result of avoiding plane travel, which is far safer, and this is large in part due to the perceived increased risk of air travel in light of September 11th. So a dread risk is basically this: when the danger you fear is less than the actual danger. And as a result, in trying to avoid that danger, we engage in riskier behavior. Like an example of this could be the parents who are afraid of their kids getting poisoned by Halloween candy, but fail to pay attention to the ways in which kids are most likely poisoned, which is unguarded materials and substances beneath the kitchen sink. Dread risks usually show up when there's low probability but high impact crashes or accidents. There's usually an element of incontrollability, like I wasn't in control of this, I wasn't the pilot, I was a passenger. There's some level of catastrophic potential. Though 43,000 people a year die in cars, there's something that sticks in our brain when 70 to 100 plus people die in a single crash. And lastly, this causes an emotional response that overtakes statistical reasoning. We overestimate the probability of rare but shocking events. If fewer people refuse to fly as a result and end up increasing the miles they drive, it's likely going to have a negative effect. The number one killer of young kids in this country is cars. You're more likely to be killed in America by a car rather than murder, and this is a uniquely American problem compared to other developed countries. But we're habituated to this type of violence, so it really doesn't cause us to stop and think of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. So this is roughly 70 people died in the plane crash, and you can already see that people started canceling their flights and getting afraid of it, because it's super creepy. It's also really rare for like two objects in a three-dimensional airspace to run into each other.
Yep.
There's a lot of like bullshit posting online about why didn't they just move? Why didn't they just dart away from each other? Let's be real that most of the process of flying a plane is not something you do visually. It's done on radar.
Right.
And so like there was like a technical issue that they haven't really resolved or figured out yet. I think the other thing is just how rare it is, how rare not just mid-air collisions, but deaths in airplane crashes are.
Right.
Versus the number of flights that are, going crisscrossing every day. Literally hundreds of thousands of people fly every day. I'm thinking it's roughly 6,000 to 10,000 flights per day, each with more than 100 passengers or more. So we're just saying it's just a lot of people flying, versus the number of people who are driving. I don't know. They might figure out the statistics some months or years later, but there is a real possibility that more people will die as a result of the news coverage of that crash than who died in the crash itself, which is totally crazy. And I think it just opens up a whole idea of dread risks. I started thinking about, are there other dread risks? I asked ChatGPT for some, and I came up with some more. Here are the ones that ChatGPT came up with. So first, of course, fear of flying. Fear of terrorist attacks. That's really the point of a terrorist attack, is to get you afraid. And of course, he was talking about 9/11. Like that's where this idea of fear of flying came from. And they found out more people died after 9/11 than in 9/11.
Right.
Well, I think it was within years, but still. Another one is a really good one: nuclear power plants accidents. Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island. Obviously horrible incidents, but actually cause fewer deaths and illnesses than, say, coal power plants. Like the rarity. I mean, so many nuclear power plants run pretty efficiently as of right now, but we can't really build new ones because of the fears that people have of meltdowns. Mass shootings, as bad as they are, the result, it is terrifying. It is like the new terrorist attack. There was actually a report out this morning, and I'm probably going to get it wrong because I haven't heard much about it other than like the headline. But there was a mass shooting in Georgia at a school. I think it was in Appalachia somewhere. It was 4 people killed. It was on the news. It was one of the first shootings that was live streamed on TikTok, right? It was super, publicized. There were actually more threats to schools after those shootings, and it's something that happens a lot, where there are copycats students who are calling in threats to schools, people who are afraid of other students who might have guns. Like it causes a sort of mass hysteria kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And that one was particularly bad, but it
Mhm.
happens a lot. Vaccines. I mean, I almost don't even want to say the word vaccine on here because you can get your video pulled. But,
Right. Exactly.
but
Mhm.
let's just be real. There are vaccine hoax. There are definitely people who peddle in misinformation. But then there's just
Mhm.
real fears of some of the side effects of vaccines, and by no means are we saying like those are real, but the fear is real. And
Mhm.
the fear of them actually causes more harm than whatever harm could come from the vaccine itself. And then the one that got me was purchasing firearms for self-protection.
Mm.
This one, people understand this idea from statistics, but it's really difficult for them to process it emotionally. But if someone were stalking you, or if there were some reason in your neighborhood, like there have been a few break-ins in your neighborhood,
Mhm.
and you decide to purchase a gun for your own safety, you should know that you're not making yourself safer. You are actually causing like a precipitous increase in your own demise. The reason for that is that we are not machines, right? So the first of all, the greatest risk to you from you owning a gun is you using that gun on yourself. And most people don't recognize that we often have breakdowns. We have bad days. We sometimes just shit happens that you cannot see coming. You might get drunk or high or in some state of mind where if you had a gun in your house, you might use it on yourself. Like that's a reality, not a high reality. Don't get me wrong. It's not suicide risk is not through the roof or anything, but it is high.
Mhm.
And the fact that if you own a gun versus not own a gun is like a deciding factor whether you're not you survive a suicide attempt. So that's the first risk. The second risk is if you do face an intruder, the intruder is much more likely to be on high alert and to have been in situations where they have been aggressive toward other people than you have, right? Like they're
Mhm.
ready. They're ready for a fight when they come in your house. Like their nerves are on high when they're
Yeah.
breaking into your house. And so if you come out with a gun, you're going to be like, you don't expect that. If you
Right.
have a gun in your hand, bitch, they going to take the gun from you and kill you. Like if you get into a fight with somebody who's breaking into your house and you have a gun in your hand, it's way more likely to be used against you to kill you. But we don't think that's true because we cannot, and I don't think we should be able to understand that we have a different mindset based on our arousal, our fears, our emotional states at the time. You will not be able to function well in that situation unless you have trained to function well in such a situation. You'd have to put yourself in that situation over and over and over and over again
Mhm.
for it to become normal and for you to do that, or you'd have to be a sociopath or whatever. Like what
Wow, a sociopath.
seriously, yeah, you'd have to be some sort of like, mind you, sociopaths aren't always bad.
No.
We were kind of talking about this that some people who are sociopaths become surgeons,
Mm.
or CEOs or whatever. Like they just don't have this high emotional reaction to high stakes events. That's what we're saying. Sociopathy plus the need to cause harm is what really makes someone into like a murderer or some, manipulator. But sociopathy is just the fact that you don't have emotional responses to things the way that other people do. Um, Antisocial behavior. So anyway, they talked about this very interestingly in this book, which I would recommend highly. It's called Dying of Whiteness. Now,
Mhm.
the thesis in this book was that the reason Republican politics is the way that it is that white people are afraid of black people. And not just like fear of black people physically. Of course they are. I mean, that's what drives the love of the Second Amendment is because I don't know about them niggas. I need me a gun.
Right, exactly.
But it's also things like Obamacare. Like this idea that my money and my effort would go to pay for someone black or brown, or there be it, a black trans immigrant,
Hmm.
whatever, someone other than me,
Right.
healthcare, that is the deciding factor for a lot of Republican politics, which is like, and the dread risk that they were talking about is the fact that white people are the ones who are more likely to suffer at the hands of Republican politics because they're the ones who run those Republican states. They use like Tennessee, Kansas, and I think Ohio as examples of states that are mostly white and Republican.
Hmm.
And there are states where they have very liberal gun laws, very low spending on health care, very low taxes, which basically drain their educational systems. And the people who suffer the most, in numbers at least, are white people.
Yeah.
Because you're the ones in the majority. You're the ones
Yeah,
causing.
because like when the whole cutting off the SNAP benefits or your food stamps, mostly it was white people who were being affected by that, and people thought it was black people. Like, no, it's white people.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it stems from fear. Now, the
Hmm.
thing is, like, when we say fear or when I say it, I think I'm afraid sometimes that I am sympathizing with these people.
Hmm.
Not sympathizing with them, I'm just trying to rationalize the reasons why people make such bad decisions about their politicians and about the choices that we made in our government now. Um, it is based in fear. And of course, they stoked it.
Hmm.
But I think this is something that we have to consider for ourselves in our everyday lives. Um, Whenever you have a decision made in fear, I would check it because sometimes those fears can lead you to even worse outcomes, and that's just for ourselves
Right.
and things like that. So, like, in advertisements, in definitely in capitalism, I've seen people try to stoke people's fears, investing in like gold and silver, and there's like, the
Hmm.
stock market is volatile. Make sure you have life insurance or whatever. I don't know. There's so many things like policies, products that are sold to us through our fears. um, I think you have to take a step back, take a breath, and recognize you are susceptible to being manipulated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so that's, I think, the point of this entire segment, which is like, don't be manipulated. Like, the media manipulates us into watching by showing us horrible things,
Hmm.
making us afraid, making us want to learn more about things that make us afraid. Um, that fear gets us to, um, buy certain products and to
Act
just
out
be
in different ways too.
exactly.
Act out in ways that we wouldn't normally.
Exactly. And it's a very effective tool. And we're all susceptible to it because
Yeah.
we're human, and it's a survival mechanism. So, yeah, dread risks. Like, you are at risk when you're afraid of things. You just are. You get at higher risk for downfall. So let me just run through some of these comments and we'll move
Yeah.
on.
Um, I got it. Let's
Okay.
see. Um, oh shit, my food's 1 minute away. Um, oh, I'm in the wrong thing. Sorry. Um, good morning, guys. Severance is very good. You guys are the reason why I'm watching in the eye. Candy, aka Dylan, is another reason why I watch. He's so cute.
He
uh,
is. I was gonna say, like, he reminds me of Hurley from Lost. I was starting to
mhm,
make these comparisons to Lost, like he is that
mhm,
character. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah. They like to say, why can't we make our own character and stop stealing theirs? And they always like to say, well, what if we swap Black Panther or Storm, which you can't because being black is core to them, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't do that. But you know, and then white people are scared if they if there was a day they became slaves, they could never dish out what they gave. That is true. They never would.
there's something else I heard recently.
Mm-hmm.
That Wolverine was not supposed to be white.
He wasn't.
He was supposed to be like an indigenous
Mm-hmm.
character. Anyway,
Yeah, it's a lot of characters in Marvel and in DC that were not supposed to be the race that they are. They were supposed to be something completely different.
yeah.
Yeah.
So on that note, let me move on. It's super fascinating. I did listen to a summary of the recent Storm comic on YouTube. Oh my
Me
god.
too. Yeah,
Oh god.
that was interesting. I was just like, oh.
That yeah.
Hold on, I'll be right back. Give me. A
Okay,
second.
okay. So yeah, whoever wrote that recent Storm comic, if you haven't seen it, like it's pretty much out there. I really do enjoy it. I think that what was it? Race swapping, it can't go both ways because of the differential in power that exists. Like we were saying, that there was always this idea that certain characters were less likely to be palatable to wider audiences because of racism, and especially in the South. I was looking at a reel of Hollywood actors and movies where they actually did different cuts of the movie for the South. Like they would literally cut certain scenes out of the movie so that the black people in the movie were cut out of it. Just like literally they would whitewash the movie for certain audiences so that they could sell it. So that's something crazy. All right, so my next one is going to be a topic on unconsciousness and the idea of choosing your own suffering. So there's this saying that it goes around, and I think it's valid in a certain way, but it's also invalid, which is to say the things that things that you don't change eventually become the things that you choose. Like if you're not changing it, you're choosing it. And there is something to be said about that, but they are quoting from this book by Eckhart Tolle, or is she called Eckhart Tolle? I don't know. I thought it was Tolle, but anyway. Eckhart Tolle wrote this book called The Power of Now, and I think he also did this other one called A New Earth, but I think she's quoting from The Power of Now, that said the idea of choosing implies consciousness or awareness of your choices, right? Because we can make choices on a subconscious, unconscious level. In a sense, it's almost like you're programming. Like the idea, like I've never driven, so I don't know this personally, but people will say, like, if you've driven home from work, you could literally just zone out and your body literally just drives home without you even thinking about it. We can do things on autopilot, very complicated, very mechanically intricate things on autopilot, and including things within our own life. Like say for instance, certain tasks that I have at work, I will make certain mistakes if I don't change, because let's say like the interface change or our products changed or whatever, and I just do it automatically. One of the things he's saying is that one of the reasons why what you don't change, you choose is maybe is unfair, is because sometimes the things we choose, we don't choose consciously, right? So let me play this clip and we'll talk about it.
The phrase, anything that you are not changing, you are choosing, has been coming up a lot on my For You page lately. And I find it interesting because Eckhart Tolle actually talks about it in his book, The Power of Now. And I'm going to read you a little snippet of this because I find it very intriguing. On page 266, what about all those people who it seems actually want to suffer? I have a friend whose partner is physically abusive towards her, and her previous relationship was of a similar kind. Why does she choose such men, and why is she refusing to get out of this situation now? Why do so many people actually choose pain? And I know that the word choose is a favorite New Age term, but it isn't entirely accurate in this context. It is misleading to say that somebody chose a dysfunctional relationship or any other negative situation in his or her life. Choice implies consciousness, a high degree of consciousness. Without it, you have no choice. Choice begins the moment you disidentify from the mind and its conditioned patterns, the moment you become present. Until you reach that point, you are unconscious, spiritually speaking. This means that you are compelled to think, feel, and act in certain ways according to the conditioning of your mind. Your friend is stuck in a relationship with an abusive partner, and not for the first time. Why? No choice. The mind, conditioned as it is by the past, as always seeks to recreate what it knows and is familiar with. Even if it is painful, at least it is familiar. The mind always adheres to the known. The unknown is dangerous because it has no control over it. That's why the mind dislikes and ignores the present moment. Nobody chooses dysfunction, conflict, pain. Nobody chooses insanity. They happen because there is not enough presence in you to dissolve the past, not enough light to dispel the darkness. You are not fully here. You have not quite woken up yet. In the meantime, the conditioned mind is running your life. It always looks as if people had a choice, but that is an illusion. As long as your mind with its conditioned patterns runs your life, as long as you are your mind, what choice do you have? None. If you want me to read a couple more things that I have highlighted in here, I'd be more than happy to. I'm obsessed with this book. And this really helped me tap back into my spirituality and understand how disassociated I was in my everyday life. And I was using literally everything as a distraction instead of just being with myself. And now I'm at a point where I love my life. No matter what has happened, no matter what is happening, I'm okay because I control me. And that is one hell of a powerful place to be.
Yeah, so I like this idea that we do over-identify with our mind. And one of the things that stood out to me is this idea of when we have a thought, we say, I thought, I said that, we wouldn't say something like I beat my heart, or I pumped my blood. Certain aspects of your mind or your body happen without your conscious control. And thoughts are kind of like that, right? And one of the ways that you come to recognize that is through meditation. And I think obviously meditation is highly associated with Buddhism and Hinduism and just Eastern religion in general. And a lot of that stuff is a lot of mumbo jumbo, like it's tied into culture and like mythology and, just sort of like not fact based, but there is a real deep truth to mindfulness. And that is you start to recognize that you're not your thoughts. That if you're able to get a full sense of awareness, you realize that thoughts arise whether or not you want them to. You cannot control what thoughts pop up in your mind. If you try to sit there and meditate for a while, you realize, oh, I'm not the one who thinks these things. I'm not the one in control here. This thing is controlling me. This mind, this brain is steering me, not the other way around. Like it's the one in control. And so, like there are these sorts of mechanisms that work for survival. They work well, like they were saying, kind of well-worn paths that you're familiar with, even if they're destructive. Like they said, these sort of abusive relationships is one of the reasons why people say they seek out relationships that mirror their relationships with their parents or their caregivers, even if they're abusive, because it's something that you understand, it's familiar. That's a well-worn path of a mental behavior pattern,
Yep.
And then there's just like we were talking about, fears about airplanes and crashes. I one of the ones that I didn't put on there was fear of like autonomous vehicles, right? There's something about robots and self-driving cars that are super disconcerting to us because we know they're not alive. We know that they're machines, that they don't really have any thoughts or whatever, but they move and act just like they do. And I would make the point that as bad as this sounds, that most people are kind of like those robots. like we're not really aware. Like we're alive and we're conscious up there, but most of the time there's just a program moving our bodies and moving us through the world. We're busy off somewhere in our own little heads doing whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
We're not consciously aware of what we're doing. Like we might as well be robots. I mean, just go around in any large city, and as you're walking or whatever, and you know, like people just move in ways that are unconscious. Like they're just not there. You know, they're navigating it, but they're also trying to be in a different headspace because they're either uncomfortable or they're thinking about where they're going rather than where they are. You know, and it's pretty clear that there's a lot of like just automatic programming going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's also pretty creepy, and I started to see about that with you know, the popularity of zombie stories and narratives and things like that is kind of goes into that same idea that like to some degree we act like zombies a lot. Like it was one of those things where when people are all sitting at a table having lunch or whatever, and they all pull out their phones and start scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, oh, feels like we just like The Walking Dead game happened, you know. It's like y'all aren't really there.
Right.
You're here, but you're not really here. And I think it's a good in a way that we have these programs that can run our bodies and move us through the world. That it is a miracle in a sense that we don't have to be consciously aware. It does take a lot of energy and effort. And that's where my suggestion to people is to find some sort of mindfulness practice to, you know, not be on autopilot all the time.
Right.
Be aware, you know, like being on autopilot is great. Don't get me wrong. Like when you need to go on autopilot, please. But there are some times in your life where you really need to be present and recognize, especially when you're making important decisions, to not just let them be made for you, because your body is powerful and complicated enough to do that. You know, to make big decisions based on things far beyond your recognition. I started reading this book about determinism and free will and neurology and neuroscience, and you know, one of the things that they discover about how we make decisions are based on people who have certain injuries to their brain. And what they found is that a lot of our decision making comes from areas of the brain that are associated with emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we make a lot of rational decision making, right? Like we weigh a lot of decisions. We might look at statistics or whatever. But the thing that really sways us are the emotions that those statistics arise. You know, like we have a base level of emotion. Does this feel good? Does that feel good? And because people who don't have that, does this feel good section of their brain will just sit there stuck in analysis for way too long. They would just be weighing out pros and cons. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, like I was doing earlier about a situation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes you got to go with your gut. You just got to go like,
yeah,
okay.
and I think I'm gonna just go with my gut on this one. And I'm like, okay, so I made a decision, and whatever happens, just happens.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Pretty much. And typically that's the decision you're going to make anyway. So like,
yeah,
because you know, when you gather all this information, ultimately it's just trying to justify the decision you've already made. I mean, that's the crazy part about it. You've already made the decision. All this other shit is just helping you justify it. And they gave an example of this, for instance, and I love this as a science nerd. Whenever you make a decision to buy something expensive, they use the example of a car. After you've bought the car and you cannot return the car, you actually start to pay attention more to the advertisements for that car. You start to see that car more as you drive around in public. You say, oh, he's got a car like mine. He's got a car like mine. The reason why is because you are post hoc trying to justify the decision you already made. You're looking at advertisements, not information like analysis, but advertisement, something that is designed to convince you to buy something you've already bought. And the reason you notice all the cars that are like yours out in public is because you want to justify it in a social sense, like, oh, they got the same car. That must be a good car. I made the right decision. You're just trying to, let's say you buy the Switch 2, you're going to see Switch 2s everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So I made a good decision. Although Switch 2, I might be getting the Switch 2.
I'm definitely getting a Switch 2. I'm always sold, so.
That's the thing. I didn't buy a Switch, but Switch 2, I'm like, they're talking about making the price cheaper too. I'm like,
hey, if they do that, I mean, yeah,
relatively cheaper, like at $400, like
because the I believe when it came out, the Zelda OLED that I had was like 300 or three. It was somewhere between 300 and 400.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, but like if they were to keep it with inflation, it would be like 450 to 500.
mm-hmm.
So it's actually relatively cheaper if they keep it at 400, relative to inflation. I'm like, if they can keep it at 400,
I'm sold.
Yeah, me too. It's a little bit bigger too. That was the only problem I had. I have huge hands. I was afraid of those controllers being small. And it's backward compatible. Like there's so many Switch games I've never played. I'm definitely gonna be playing. Anyway, when I buy my Switch 2, I'm gonna see Switch 2 everywhere. That's because you already made the choice. And then there's another layer of your brain that tries to justify those choices. And I think that's fascinating. I do.
Yeah, but and also when I bought my OLED Zelda, I had another Switch to trade in.
Oh yeah.
So I had an extra Switch to trade in. I was like, oh
yeah. Yeah, I know that Mario Kart's supposed to be one of the
Mario Kart. We don't know what they're calling it, 9 or it's supposed to be a new Mario Kart game though. Yeah.
Which is also interesting to note that this is the first Nintendo system ever that had a number attached. They've never done a number. They've done like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, 64, Wii U, Switch, and then Switch 2. What?
Yeah.
Not to mention all the what is it, the DS Plus, whatever those systems.
Oh, the DSi, the 3DS, the DS, the DS XL, the DSi, and then we got the 3DS. Yeah. Right.
There's so many DS ones. I'm like, what the fuck? Anyway. They just did a 2? What? Not Nintendo, no. Well, apparently the Switch was such a hit that they were like, it would be a shame to change the name.
Right.
Like it's just such a powerhouse of a system. Yeah, I forget what the Zelda packet or whatever, the one that was bundled with Zelda was the top selling video game ever. Yeah, like in all history of games. Anyway, I'm probably in it there. Where we got on topics? I mean, comments.
The only one we got was Sammy. He said, if you choose an abusive relationship because it feels familiar, it will make you question all their life choices.
Yeah.
It
is unfortunate. It is unfortunate that it happens a lot. All right. So let me see what I got here. I think this is something we're gonna have to talk about Wednesday.
Okay.
Finances. Right now, if you weren't aware, Trump is about to impose tariffs that start tomorrow.
Yep.
25% for Canada and Mexico, and an extra 10% for China. And there's a difference between some of the tariffs from China that were happening, so that we can't get cheap shit from China anymore. Like, so there have been tariffs from China for a while, but there was an exception for deliveries under $800.
Oh.
They're removing that exception, and that means you can't buy cheap shit from Temu anymore. And it also means that a lot of businesses in the US are going to start tampering down. And of course, that also means the prices of things in the US are going to go up pretty quickly. 48% of all products are affected. And yeah. So, as a consumer, we're going to have to learn how to tighten up our belts. If you want to be a good person or to be a happy person, you need to be able to do things with your money. The problem is that the way that we think about money is not just dollars and cents on a pad. You know, it is emotional, it is cultural, it is complicated. I'm going to play this real quick and then we'll talk about it.
As someone who didn't grow up being taught the proper sort of financial health and how to properly manage my finances, to no fault of anyone, if you don't know, you don't know. So how can you teach someone something you don't know? But as I've gotten older, something that I've really struggled with as I've actively tried to get more financially responsible and teach myself how to be more financially responsible is that, one, a lot of people moralize money and your ability to be good with your finances, whether they realize it or not. They determine how they feel about you morally, your character, if you are not good with managing money. And two, a lot of the tips and tricks that people have when it comes to managing money, save this certain amount, this is how, all those rules, people don't realize it requires you to have extra for that to make sense. If you're making not enough to live, you cannot save. I wish people would talk more about that. We don't talk about how complicated one's relationship is with money beyond the scarcity of it all, beyond how hard it is to get it. There's a really deep emotional component that comes with one's relationship with money. Like society makes us moralize ourselves for our inability to hoard it properly. And I feel like when it comes to the conversation about being better with money, we don't talk about at what end, for what cause. Yes, let's be more responsible. Let's manage our emotional responses in relation to how we use money. That's good for us. But there seems to be this like moralization of you're not good at hoarding money because there's something fundamentally wrong with you, rather than should we even be hoarding money? How much makes sense? I come from a culture where you send a lot of money back home and you're always redistributing your wealth to your family and to people around you, and that's your investments, and pure human capital is your investments. Whereas in the West, your investments are in terms of like land or property or more tangible like material things. Sometimes people's inability to save is not because they're not smart enough or they don't understand they have to save. Sometimes people have addictions when it comes to how they use money because of how traumatizing poverty is traumatizing. I don't know if you know this. Poverty is traumatizizing. And people can have a lot of traumatizing relationships with money, and we don't maybe necessarily make space for conversation about it to that depth. We're just, no, just save your money. What are you doing? Just save it. And it's, okay, that sounds easy, but there's like there's so much more nuance to that conversation. And I wish people talk about it more, because I wouldn't have felt so guilty for so long about money in general. Anyways.
Yeah. So her culture, what she's talking about, she's Nigerian American, and there is this idea of a lot of immigrants who come to this country who do see their investments as in making money here and sending some back home for their family, investing in, you know, having a stronger family union, and that's their investment versus, you know, Americans having their own, investing in the stock market or into properties that, you know, accrue over time. And I think there is this idea that we do moralize about money and the worth of a person or their values if they don't, like she said, hoard money properly. Like if you're not saving money, we see you as a wasteful person, and that you don't value the things that you have, and that is a moral pox on your house, in a sense, saying, you know, I think of you less because you don't value the things that you have by, you know, keeping them. So I'll tell you this though, as far as the way to save money and some of the rules that she didn't cover, I want to talk about those a little bit. So one of the rules that I've never kept, so let's just be clear, I don't, is that you should have a savings account that is equivalent to 6 months of your salary at all times. The reason for that is that that's about the amount of time that if you were to be laid off or something, that it would take you for you to find another job on average. And that's in a good economy. In a even worse economy, maybe where unemployment is much higher, you would have almost up to a year. The amount that you should be saving from your account every month is a roughly 20%. 20% of your money should be going into a savings account that is, you can divide it into different areas if you want to, because that's also a good idea. So like you could have a certain amount of savings that you can draw from on a regular, and say like that's about a month's worth of salary. And then another portion of it is like, 3 months worth of salary that you never touch no matter what. And then maybe another portion which is for high-end products that you might want to buy, or for emergencies of some sort that are pretty big that you would almost never touch. But prioritizing your savings. Sometimes people call those sinking accounts. And the reason they call them sinking is that you think of it as like a pool, and it has like 3 barriers, like it's all your money, but you would have a portion of it that is never touched, and then you don't touch the other money until you deplete this money, right? And then your behaviors should change based on how much you have in these sinking accounts, right? Like if all 3 of your sinking accounts are full, then that gives you the leeway to buy more luxury items and to have more frivolous things that you can buy, because you have this large sinking account to cover you in case of an emergency. But like if your sinking account is empty, your behavior should be quite different. Like you shouldn't be eating out. You probably should put off anything that you have. One of the things I would say, whenever you're trying to deprive yourself of something, the most important thing to do is to find something that doesn't make you feel deprived, that you can eat. For me, it's food. Like before we came on here, I ordered some food. I cannot order fast food very often and stay within my budget, right? Like I have to eat from the grocery store, and I have to cook my food or my budget blows up. Like it just can't. And so in a case like that, that means that I have to make sure that I eat food that makes me satisfied, not just like physically, but emotionally,
Right.
And the other thing would be like modes of entertainment. I started cutting some of my services, and I started going to the library. There are free versions of the book services that I was reading that I was not taking advantage of. But I think whenever you get into this area where you're trying to cut things, you have to put something in its place, or it's not going to last. And I think that's just the biggest thing I would say for people who are trying to cut. And it's almost too late to start now. I hate to tell people because this shit's going into effect now. But we probably should have done this back in November. I would like as soon as Trump won, we should have started saving money. But it's never too late, right? Like it's gonna get bad, but it's also gonna get bad over time. And so anyone here who watches our show or is a part of it, I implore you to take care of you and yours. And be ready. We want you to be ready.
Right.
So, and that doesn't mean that we don't have to come to it from a place of fear.
Nope.
It's just a very rational decision to make, to like start tightening our belts, squirreling away a little money, finding places where you can cut your expenses. It doesn't have to be a scary thing, just like a completely rational thing. Because one of the things I was thinking, like, even if the worst ideas of what's going to happen don't pan out, it's going to be a help to have this, this extra security blanket.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm hoping that it won't turn out bad, and I'm trying not to catastrophize because we really don't know what's going to happen. But the odds are it's not going to be good. Yeah. So on that, I think we should get our comments and then go to Patreon. Do we have any more?
No, that was it. The last one was Sammy.
Okay, so make sure to join Swag tomorrow. at 7 p.m. where, you know, maybe his mama says something funny or his cat crazy. Catch what the straights, see if they're okay. We'll get into some more of these. I probably have some romantic topics. Maybe something from the Love Cast. Who knows? Wednesday. And of course, Cream has all of the pop culture hot goss tea, popping hot tea for you on Thursday. And of course, the Saturday sit down. Who knows what Greg's got? He's trying to do a full on Barbara Walters. So, you know.
What?
Barbara Walters, you know what I'm saying? You
I know who Barbara Walters is, yeah, but I'm just like, huh?
Yeah, he wants to do like an interview type show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And of course, the Blurred Council will be breaking down so much of what's going on in the Nerdland. It's quite a bit. So, yeah, we're going to do a little bit of Patreon. If you want to support Male Media Mind, go to patreon.com/Male Media Mind. We have after shows. I'm working on my podcast. I hope I get it out this week. But we also have Telegram groups, a Discord server, and we're always looking for new ways to support our patrons for helping support the show. So we're going to do a little Patreon topic right now. And so join us. All right. So we're on Patreon. I went a little long, so I'm just gonna do. What was that? Anyway, I have one extra topic, which this is interesting. Choosing choice. Another topic about choice. So this is something I've gotten into it with Greg about. Making difficult choices in life. Oftentimes, I think like when something is difficult that we have to do, I find it liberating to recognize that maybe I don't have to do that. And I remember when I was talking with Greg about it, he was talking specifically about going to physical therapy. You know, he had a fall about 18 months ago, around his birthday, I think.
Maybe I remember that discussion.
Yeah, I think it's actually going on 2 years now. It's getting close to about 2 years. And, you know, he was basically, you remember in the decision tree of whether or not to go through a physical therapy. I was having this conversation with him about the fact that my mom is in a situation where she is losing a lot of mobility, and I cannot get her to go to physical therapy because it's just painful. You know, like if you're in these situations, like you can choose not to go. It's like, you know, that is a choice. He's like, in his mind, he's like, no, it's not a choice. I have to do this. I don't have a choice. And I don't know if there's a right answer, you know, because I think it's just different for different people. But I wanted you to think about this when you're making difficult decisions. Is it beneficial to you to think about the fact that you really don't have to do it if you don't want to? I'm going to play this. I'm going to use the restroom, and then hopefully when I get back, it's embracing the idea that you can choose not to do stuff. All right.
Okay, hopefully I can phrase this right, because I just read something in this book, and I have to share it. So this is the second book by Oliver Burkeman, who wrote 4,000 Weeks. It's called Meditations for Mortals. And this chapter is called You Need Only Face the Consequences on Paying the Price. So he says that the way we normally operate is we think freedom means having good choices. It means being able to clear all of the noise and being free to make a clear decision. But that's not real. That's not true, he says. He gives the example of a working mom who says, I can't relax in the evening until the children's toys are tidied away. But the reality, of course, he writes, is that you absolutely can relax with the toys not tidied away. There is no 11 p.m. home inspection with someone coming around to see if the toys are picked up. You need only be willing, this is the part that kills me, to pay the price of relaxing in such circumstances, which is a less than pristine home. Another quote, the temptation is often to exaggerate potential consequences so as to spare ourselves the burden of making a bold choice. That we use there are consequences to convince ourselves that we shouldn't make a choice, that we're just waiting until there are zero consequences. And now, of course, the scale of a consequence can vary. So people from marginalized identities, or if it's about quitting a job, for example, like not everyone can just quit a job. Like there are many reasons why consequences are actually real and prevent us from making certain choices. But freedom isn't a matter of not having those consequences. He says it's realizing that nothing stops you doing anything at all, so long as you're willing to pay those costs. That we need to figure out what we are willing to pay for. If the choice is, for example, to stay at a toxic job or to quit that toxic job, you choose which pain you want more. What price are you willing to pay? Are you willing to pay staying at the job and being miserable? Or are you willing to leave the job and pay the price of maybe not knowing how you're going to get your paycheck? Both of those are prices to pay. And so the calculation, to reiterate again, is not waiting until there are no prices to pay, no consequences, that'll never happen, but deciding how much you are willing to pay, what costs you're willing to accrue in any choice. Something about this is destroying me. This is like such a powerful reframe for me, and it gets you out of your own way. And he says the freedom is not from limitation, but in limitation. Freedom to examine the trade-offs, because there will always be trade-offs, and then to opt for whichever trade-off you like.
Yeah, it is interesting because there's also this thing known as the paradox of choice, which is that the more choices we have, the more crippling and difficult it is to make those choices. And the less satisfied we are with the choices that we make. So part of this is the idea if we limit the options that we have, we may be more satisfied with the choices that we make. But then oftentimes, if it's a difficult choice, like between two things, can we rationally and productively think about what the consequences of those choices are? I think sometimes, in the case like I was talking about before the video with Greg about not going to physical therapy, we're so unthinkable that he wasn't even considering what those consequences would be. It was just like, I'm not even considering that. Let's just do this. But I think there is also a freedom that comes with recognizing that you made this choice freely. Instead of like, I have to do this. I think there's a difference from that. Like when you're in the middle of doing it, feeling this horrible pain, saying like, oh man, I have no choice. I have to do this versus, no, I freely chose to do this. That feeling of like, I freely chose to do this, even though this is shitty. God damn, I hate doing this. But there's a certain comfort I take in saying that I chose this. Mind you, the other choice was shittier. So it's not like I chose from a bouquet of beautiful choices that I chose this horrible thing. It's just like, this is the least horrible of some shitty choices, but I chose this.
Like saying we chose, well, you choose the lesser of two evils.
Yeah,
pretty much. That's basically what that's saying.
And recognizing that it's a choice versus being imposed on you. Like if you wanted to, and the point I was making is like, you're broke. If you wanted to, you could go pull a set it off and rob a bank. Like you could. You could. Like that's a thing a person can do. People have robbed banks.
Yeah.
If you're willing to face the choices, the consequences of either being in jail or dead, you could go do that.
You really could.
Yeah. And that gives you sort of like, okay, but I don't want to die. I don't want to be in jail.
And I don't want to go to jail either.
I guess I won't do that. But if you're willing to face the consequence, you can do some things that are unpalatable. And I think there's a certain satisfaction or a palliative nature to recognizing that it's a choice I made. I think of that in terms of what she talked about in the video about cleaning up and making the choice to clean. Because I often make the choice not to clean. I have like filthy areas sometimes. Like I just let it get out of control. And then I hate the way it feels when it's dirty.
Yeah.
And so I sort of make sure it's a choice every day to clean up some, and I remind myself that it's worth the time it takes to clean this. Like it's because all it does is take a little bit every day, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I just do a little bit of cleaning every day instead of like waiting to the weekend and doing a whole mop thing. And I used to do that like every Friday. I would spend my evenings cleaning the house. Instead, I pause before I do certain things. Like whenever I go use the bathroom, I pause and I say, you know what, I'm just gonna wipe everything down. Just like pull out. I have like my scrubber and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Scrub the whole bathroom once, after a use, and then I don't have to do it like a whole bathroom scrub every day. It literally takes me like 30 seconds to do that. Same with the kitchen, instead of like some weird thing where you soak your dishes in the sink or whatever. I was like, I'm just gonna wash these dishes and put them up. I'm just gonna. I don't need to soak shit. I'm gonna get a scrubber, scrub the shit off, and wash and put it up. But those little choices are powerful. Exercise is a very good example. I'm in a place now where I haven't been to the gym for a few months, and I'm wondering if I'm going back. Like I saw that bill on my statement this morning. Am I gonna? I don't know, because I don't think so. I don't know. I've been doing more workouts from home.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll see. Like whatever that choice is. I definitely enjoyed the feeling of going to the gym, but my issue has been transportation. Like, I have to use the public transportation and it's just not hitting right. Like I can't depend on it. So we'll see. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. Okay.
I got
Yeah, my issue right now going to the gym is my work schedule right now. My body has become attuned to being up longer than it for longer purposes after I get off work. Now that I'm going to say temporarily, I'm speaking it into existence that this is a temporary of me working overnight, not
yeah.
permanent. So my body is now more attuned to staying up, so I can't go to the gym.
Okay.
So yeah, it's still a bit of a change and a challenge to what I'm used to, but
Yeah.
I'm getting there. It's like
Yeah.
I'm better adjusted.
Are you getting good sleep?
Yeah.
That's good. That's always where it starts. I'm in this sort of double bind where I'm having trouble sleeping, but like when they say that you have trouble sleeping, you shouldn't drink caffeine because that can exacerbate it. And I definitely don't do too much at night or any at night. But at the same time, like when I'm having trouble sleeping without caffeine, I'm fucked. There's no
What do
way
you
to
mean?
interact.
What do you mean without? I mean, so what kind of caffeine are you using to go to sleep?
Just coffee. No, I'm just saying in the morning.
Oh, okay, okay,
When I get up,
okay.
and if I don't have any coffee, especially I haven't been sleeping, and I'm expected to actually think, or I'm like, "Ugh, this is awful. And yet, by
Yeah, you
drinking
probably-
this coffee, I'm
Mhm.
exacerbating my ability to sleep at night.
Well,
But I'll, yeah.
I have a question. Like, so are you? Do you work a morning shift?
No, I mean, I get up around 8 and I do start work in the morning and maybe like 3 hours, and then I do another 3 hours in the evening. I do call center work, but
Okay.
I was yeah, ugh, I was much it was much easier for me to sleep when I was working out at the gym.
Mm.
And right now I'm so sleepy that I don't see myself having enough energy to go to the gym. And
Mm.
so I think after I finish this, I'm gonna maybe do some. I have a bench and some free weights that I
Yeah.
can do a little bit of working out.
Hmm.
I'll do something right after this. Maybe take a nap. But when I was thinking about also tying into uh, trying to save or whatever, I didn't have enough time to cook breakfast, so I order some McDonald's. And my guilty pleasure, the only reason I get McDonald's is for the coffee. Like,
Ah,
yeah, fucking hazelnut iced coffee. So
oh, that sounds good.
good. It really is so good.
So good.
Really good.
Like but when it comes to me and drinking coffee, I try not to drink so much. Like so the only time I drink coffee is for two reasons. One, when it's really cold, I need something in my body to keep me warm.
Yeah.
That's one reason. The other reason is to wake up. But since I needed it at first, going back and working overnight. And because the racetrack, they have the caramel macchiato creamer. Oh my god, it's so good too.
Yeah.
So that's like a small addiction or guilty pleasure, have you? um,
Yeah. Caramel and hazelnut pretty much do it for me.
yeah, and I get the hazelnut coffee. I get the next to lowest caffeine that has like the next to lowest caffeine in it. So
Yeah.
I'm not too awake when I get off. I'm not too jittery, not the good stuff. And plus, it's easier on the stomach. So,
Okay. Yeah.
so I get that.
Yeah. It is good. But yeah, regular workouts. So that's what I need to get into. And then let's see what else was going on. But no, I'm also struggling with my podcast. So one of the things I might be doing is editing this show into my audio podcast. That's actually how we ended up started recording on Monday. Is Greg and I would do a recording just for the podcast, and then we decided to do it live. And because we were doing it live, it made less of a quality recording. Like when you're recording offline, you can repeat yourself and it less interruptions. But one of the things is my podcast for the audio is only 30 minutes.
Okay.
So with us talking for 90 minutes, it's easy for me to like just cut out 2/3 of it and just use the best portions for the audio.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And we just got to 90 minutes. So I think that's where I'm going to end it. Let me go ahead and say goodbye.